Hello, and this is the first episode of the Artistpreneur, and I'm here with my dear sister friend, Shermica Farquhar.
Hey, Marjuan.
Hey, girl. Founder of Soca Tribe, and this show for me is a way for our listeners and our guests to get to know the artist, the art, and the entrepreneur, and how you created all of this. I just want to jump in and tell us about who you are, what you do, and how did you find creativity?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I feel like I should start at the end. How to find creativity? Okay. My mom jokes like I was whining before I could walk, right? So like dance and creation and creativity in that space has been something that's always been a part of my life. So started formal training when I was like 4. And then you add the culture side of it. Like I started also playing mass when I was 4. So it's just interesting how those two things started really early in my life. But I feel like coming from I call it a Brooklyn-born Trinidadian. So both my parents are from Trinidad.
I forgot that whole intro.
It's all right.
We're Trini. Right. That's how
Trini.
We're connected.
We're
Trini
right?
sister.
So I feel like in our culture, it's about security. It's about like, you go to school. They always joke about the immigrant parents. They like, you got a couple of occupations. You can be a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, business person. Like those are what you do, right? And so I took the corporate path, and I was, I went to Georgetown for undergrad, did this marketing thing. I loved it. Interestingly enough, my first job out of college was at Entertainment Weekly. So it's like, not quite as much I wasn't on the writing side, but I was actually on the business side of the so I worked in the publishing side, so just working with their marketing department, which also comes into handy today. Like I would never believe, how they say like all the things that you do kind of prepare you for where you are today. Like that first gig, working with their marketing department, rolling out campaigns, planning, thinking about promotions, all that stuff helped. I totally digress on the story. But, got my MBA, I was working in human capitals, all these things like very...
The plan.
Then I found myself out of my ass. I'm going to save the details of the story for now. And it was like, well, what do I want to do next? And I was here in D.C. I was a recent transplant to D.C. And one of the things I just picked up in my professional career at this point in time was like, I want to create solutions. So I'm like, I'm going to start this consulting firm. Starting a consulting firm is a very ambitious thing to do, especially if you don't have a huge client book. I'm just going to say, as a full-rounded individual, I'm like in my early 30s, new to a city. I'm trying to start a business and build a social circle. And I like literally was homesick. And I always joke to people, like, I didn't realize how Trini I was until I got to D.C. because I was like, wait, why is this not everywhere? Because growing up in Brooklyn, it's the accents, the music, the culture, like it just was such a part of my upbringing. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to teach this class. It's going to give me my fix of Soca, invite, like get a little bit, again, back to this third floor. Live in third floor is what I call 30 above. Like work on like my overall wellness. And so I started teaching this dance class. I'm like, I'm going to teach it ever so often. Every 2 weeks, I can pull that off. I can get a couple people together. And then it just started to grow. And it was just like, it literally took a life of its own. And I would say at that point, I really started to embrace the creative and the artist in me, which is interesting because like I said, I started when I was at 4, but kind of, I would say like structures and the way life happened, it was like, you're on this path, like you take these tests, you study these exams, you check these boxes. Like I was literally that girl. Right. And then it was like, for the first time, I had this space to create. And so I have this white space of like, so I'm creating this life for what I want. So like I said, I'm going to build this consulting company. I'm like, all right, well, I'm working on this business development. I'm doing these pitches, but that takes time. So I'm going to just teach on the weekends. And then it literally picked up its own momentum. People started buying into the movement. And I'm like, yo, I love this. Then I started traveling because I love to travel. And I'm like, you did it here. Like, try it in a different city. Oh, okay, there's a formula here. Make it work, reach out to people, think about how I'm using my network to make this happen. And the next thing I knew, okay, I'm not gonna say next thing I knew. 3 years later.
That's what I was gonna say. Okay, so
3 years.
So I mean, you start Soca Tribe,
right?
And because you see that there's a need,
yes.
You move to DC. That community that you're used to is not here, so you start to feel the need. bring all of your business skills, all the things that you've done in your past have led up to this. So what did those early stages look like? Because I think when people see artists who've created brands around themselves, around, you know, products, they think that it just happens overnight.
Absolutely
or everything
not.
is just packaged so perfectly. So what does the first year look like, or what did it look like for you, truthfully? So if you want to share, like, some of the things that clicked instantly, and also some of those frustrations.
Yep. So one, I was going off of sheer excitement. Like, that first year of Soca Tribe was, oh my God, exhilarating for a couple of reasons. One, because it's the first time that I had this space to create. Like, I didn't have a boss to check into. It was literally going to these cities, finding out, like, where would be a good location to have it, reaching out to see if I was generally other back end thing. Soca Tribe was working around life, right? Like, there was a Soca Tribe New Orleans because one of my really good friends was getting married in New Orleans. And I'm like, the way this entrepreneurship life is set up, how do we, one, I know I gotta go, let's build a class around that. And so I'm using New Orleans as a specific example because I didn't have homies in New Orleans either. So it was just like, okay, who do I know there? Who knows people? So it was as true, like, get on the research tab, and then I'm tapping into people there, like
people that you know,
people that I know, and then people that they know.
Right.
So, like, I call that my, like, stretch market, because, and that was also one where I had to, I would say, make some shifts in my business model. So generally I would, like, book a studio, pay whatever the booking fee was, and, like, I'm taking the door and everything.
You're just killing.
I'm killing
the equipment.
Like, you just gotta break every. Look, sometimes you just gotta rupture
She's
the whole.
a dancer. Okay, so this is why,
like,
the body is
actually
involved.
I think I was reading one of those BuzzFeed articles, and they were like, "How you know you're from Brooklyn?" This is what we do.
She's a dancer
this is
from
what we
Brooklyn.
do. I'm a dancer from Brooklyn, so it might have a little more flow to it. But this, and then you add in business school. This is the power zone. You have to talk right here.
Okay. So
I know people can't
sharing
see it. People
resources,
can't see
skills.
it. Back to the story. So I had to change the business model because I didn't have the usual network of, like, hey, Marjuan, talk to your 3 homegirls and tell your 3 homegirls to come out. It was, let me work with a dance studio that's willing to switch me in for one of their classes, and then, like, the whole split was completely different. So I'd say in that first year, it was kind of like trying to figure out what could make it work. Things that clicked for me instantly, it was important to let people know about my story, right? Like, how I got here. Like, everybody knows I didn't realize how Trinity I was till I came to DC because I thought that was normal. Because people don't really... the coming for the actual physical movement is usually, like, the last thing, right?
They're
like,
coming for that experience.
They're coming
culture.
they're coming for the experience. They're coming for the culture. There's something about the story that brought them in, right? Like, people don't buy into brands. They don't buy into, like, necessarily products. They buy into the story. So the story was very important to me. Things that I had to try to figure out is, like, what's the formula, right? So how should class go? How do I keep people engaged? How do I keep them coming back? And even to this day, it's still trying to figure that out. Where are the new people? Like, how do I make sure that it's still fresh and refreshing, right? So that the people who've been doing this for 2 or 3 years want to keep coming back. And that's kind of where we are. It's like, all right, well. And then I would say this fact is now we started with just, like I said, those 2 weeks of fitness classes. Fast forward to now, 3.5 years later, we have weekly classes. So I increased the frequency because I understood, like, for a fitness perspective, people want to have it on a more consistent basis. We have a performing group. So there was this idea of how do we really push the culture? And the best way to do that is through performances. Because when you come to a fitness class, yes, I can drop these little tidbits for you, but you don't want to hear a speech on why Carnival started. So how do we really educate people on that? The performing group became, like, a whole new platform. We do apparel because, hey, you got to rep the tribe. Definitely buy these shirts on socatribe.com. And as well as from a business perspective, products, they're not tied to our time, right? So if you think about just how can we get money into the door, what kind of brand extensions we can have, people want to rep, they want to support. They can't especially when I was traveling around, it's like, I'm not going to be in LA every week, but you can buy this t-shirt, support the cause.
Sure.
And right now, we're actually excited about having our first trip to Trinidad Carnival.
And you're actually taking people.
We are taking a whole crew to Trinidad.
So tell me about that, because that's incredible that you go from just ideation to teaching classes to performing, and now you have a kiddie class, and now but you've also gone to other carnivals to perform, but now you're bringing people with you.
Yes. So thanks, Marjuan, for recapping life. And when you want to quit, you be like, oh, maybe I did a couple things.
And then we're going to get to that. Like, all those times you want to quit, because that's real.
It's so real.
Tell us about bringing people to Carnival, that looks like. And then if you want to share, like, what do you do when you want to quit?
Or when I fire myself, because you have not been doing this right. Speaking of which,
trust me, I'm there every other week.
I always tell people it flips between, am I firing myself or am I quitting? Because, here we are.
Right.
And then there are good times in between. So let's talk about the good times. February 28th, 13 tribe members will be in procession of our inaugural Trinidad Carnival trip. So we've actually had a small group. It was like less than 10 people. We did a trip to Miami in our first year. Mm-hmm. And what I learned on that trip was just like, we did like an Airbnb, like we booked all the stuff. We all played mass together. It was awesome. But there wasn't as much, I would say, of the cultural enhancement, or it was a fun trip. Like it was very, very top line. And what I've realized over the last couple of years, and as we go back to like evolution of the brand and the story, what Soca Tribe is a community gateway to Caribbean carnival culture, right? So like whether you come to us from class or a kiddie and me, so like you want to bond with the child, you want to try something new, we'll do some sort of like, hey guys, this is where the Caribbean is. Let's talk to them about countries. This is what we do. We'll go through movement, things of that sort. And then through the performing group, it's like educating them, like this is why Carnival started, right? And so just trying, like in that white space as a creative, it's like, what am I going to stand for? What is my art going to look like? How do I bring people in? And then the business side, right? Because again, you can't throw away that MBA. I can't turn that thing off. Like, is there a need for this?
That Brooklyn,
like,
that Brooklyn
knocking the mic out.
Business movement thing.
It's is there a need, and how do we monetize, right?
Yeah.
So for the big trip to Trinidad, like I found a partner. So like I applied the consulting brain, right? So these are the things that I want in my trip. I literally put out what we would call like a request for proposal to a whole bunch of people who provide these types of services, had conversations, and like literally evaluated things from what's the pricing, what was the treatment, because I'm now attaching my brand to you, right? And so the idea is we want to make this the best experience as possible. And I really wanted to give them, I think going back to Trinidad for Carnival, there's the opportunity to take them to like the historical showcase of this is why Carnival started.
Right.
Because people are totally losing that, and we may not have time in this episode to discuss my feelings about that. So I'm going to pause. Oh, brand extensions. Kitty and me came up because we've been serving adults, and ever so often somebody bring their kid to class. Like, is it okay if she's here? And I'm like, as long as she stays in her space and she's safe, etc. But I also remember, like, it was such a large part of my brought up see, as we'd say back home, right? And it was so present. It would be great.
It's kind of like you're just getting back to your roots.
Like literally, it's just like I want to be able to provide a space for people like my parents or people who would, like when I had some kids would be like me. Like we want our kids to connect with this culture, but like where are they gonna find it, right? They're not learning in the regular school. So
exactly. And I guess I do want to ask you that as well, just about the craft, right? The craft of, I mean, the business side. It feels like once you find it and then you just keep going, you know, it's like business. It just takes over the admin, the management. But just getting back to the craft of dance, of African Caribbean dance, like, because you recently went to Ghana as well. So can you share like just some of what that craft is for you, and you know, how do you stay on top of, you know, training and just continuing to work in your craft?
So that's a great question. You know, when we were talking about how are we firing ourselves, I would say for me it's trying to connect with those who are better. and really like making the time for it. Like it's a conscious effort of, I want to take these classes with these specific people for this particular reason. This is what I'm trying to learn from them. This is what I'm trying to exchange. Because innately within Carnival, I'm going to say within Soca dance is a street dance, right?
Okay.
It comes from the street. So like people are more familiar with dance hall. So if I say dance hall comes from the street, they get that what I'm trying to say. Like this is not something that someone was in the studio and be like, okay, well, we're going to arabesque as the first position, second position, third position. That is not what Soca dance is.
Right.
And as a Soca dancer, so I'm going to give you guys some context. What Marjuan is referring to is I founded the Return to the Reason Festival, which was an exploration of the Caribbean carnival culture's connection to the African diaspora via movement. That's what I started. That was the thesis. I'm going to go in, I'm going to talk to people. And as I continued to talk to the dancers, both in Trinidad, there's a lot of interviews when I was in Trinidad, as well as in Ghana, it was like, it's so hard to make a direct connection from a movement perspective because one, it's a street dance, right? Which means call it like the best gumbo or cook up or palau. It's like you throw a whole bunch of things together.
Yeah.
And so you can't really say this is tied to that. However, this idea of storytelling is what was really, really prevalent. And that only came from me like actively searching out that information. So I would say from an artist perspective, it was like having the awareness, like I don't know everything. I'm okay with that. But trying to seek out the people or the resources to find out so that I could then use my platform to put that on blast. Because people won't know unless we put it out there. And that's, I think, from a artist perspective, there's that tug of war of like, how do we give them the goods, like the meat of the stuff, when it's like that's maybe not the most popular or easiest thing to sell.
I mean, you're really innovating what this dance looks like and how you give it to people, which sometimes it's hard for people to take that in.
It's a lot.
You know?
It's a lot. And then trying to figure out the best way to package it and have that conversation because, you know, life, adulting, here we are.
Exactly.
Artistpreneur.
Artistpreneur. So tell me about sometimes, like, what do you do when you feel like, you know, you want to quit?
Depends on the day.
I mean, because it's real, like, you're just constantly looking for collaborations, for partnerships, for the next project, the next thing, and, you know, and then balancing life and being an adult. So what do you do? And I guess self-care practices.
I think the easiest and the shortest answer is revisiting. Actually, no. The easiest thing to do is put on some Soca. Because I was joking with Marjuan, I was like, I really think I'm going to write a book on how Soca saved my life, right? It's generally
love that.
It's generally a jovial music genre. Because, you know, every so often there's a nice slow whine and who break my heart and sing. But the movement and getting back to that place, it is rejuvenating, right? And so, like, I'll be having the worst day and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And then I show up in class and you see these smiling faces and it's like, wow, thank you. So for me, as a natural extrovert, it's like getting that energy. So dancing, because I can throw on that music and while I'm in the crib, and then getting back to the community. So the community, I like feed off of them. So it's like they are the purpose, and this idea that I've created a space, and with that space now comes responsibility. So like they've invested in me, and so I invest in them, and it's kind of like, all right, look, make it to next week. Which is, I will say, who knows how long that lasts, right? Because it's just real. And then when you're figuring that out, there's also trying to, I think, as you mentioned, like talking about collaborations, finding the people who are like-minded and somewhat in the same space, but with a action-focused, positive mindset. And I say those two things because I do believe in the law of attraction. So if you get in a space where you're constantly talking to people, and it happens a lot in the creative space, this starving artist thing, it's whack. Yeah. It's lame. It's played out. It does not have to be. But if you get in a circle where a whole bunch of artists are like, oh my God, we're all struggling, we can't figure it out, and
you all will be struggling together.
Get off. Look, get off the bus at the next stop.
Seriously.
And find.
I totally believe in that.
like you just, because if
we were just talking about this, like, just about valuing yourself. You just get to the point where you're constantly in training and getting experiences, and then at some point, this is my job, this is my full time, and I don't get out of bed for a certain amount, and people have to respect that. And finding people who respect that and respect you, respect the preneur part and what that preneur part means, like this is still a business, is really important. And and I go back to the second part of that statement, is the action focused people, because ideation is like the death of progress, because you're ideating, you're thinking, you're iterating. It's like, if you don't do nothing, like I showed up on August 15th, 2015, never had done this before. And I was like, here we are. And you keep going. I remember my first, I'll call it my first stretch away class. I went to Chicago. There were like 8 people showed up. But so what? It didn't stop me, because, when I went to Boston, it was like 40 people. It sold out, and I ended up doing another one. So it's like, you don't know unless you try. But if you don't have people who are going to be like, go, this is what I tried. And then I would say the honesty and transparency. I mean, we all are still, I would say, managing our stories. Like, I am a strong proponent of people being transparent. I think we are in the age of oversharing on social media. That's not how I grew up. That's not, and going back to these cultural things. But that's what I was literally just talking to somebody about this yesterday, that I'm a very private person when it comes to my process, that I don't like to share every single moment, like when I'm writing and when I'm creating, because that, to me, that's a very spiritual
it's a whole
process.
thing.
And like slowly I'm starting to open up a little bit. And share what I want to, just to keep my audience engaged. But it's a difficult space to be in, where you want to create and you want to create something substantial. And especially when you're working with people, and some people want to share more, some people don't. But, you're trying to elevate the art too, which I think, and this is the purpose of, I want to do a platform like this, so people can see, we have so many different types of artists who are creating brands, but we're actually innovating a craft that it takes time for people to really understand our thought process. So, but
in the day that people have the attention span of a fish,
and they just want it like that. They just want product. They want something flashy.
Give it to me now. Give it to me now. Shake that. I just,
and I'm an introvert, so believe it or not,
I can't even imagine how much harder it is for you. And even in my extroverted, I think maybe can I be a creative introvert? Because like I literally be like, I'm a creative introvert. And it's also the creating safe space and partnerships, I would say, and like teams. So like, bringing on, so last summer, I brought on 2 chiefs, and they were monumental in the survival of Soca Tribe for the next year. Because as I said, like, there wouldn't always be a next class to get to, but it's like, okay, we have this chief meeting, now we're all engaged, where you're learning to divvy things up, and there's that creative like sounding board where they get the brand and they understand kind of like where we're trying to move to, and that's also been really helpful. So action-oriented, positive mindset people to keep you on the boat. Know what it is that can get you right into a good mood. And then I also think having a clear sense of goals. I will admit for a while I was Peter Panning, right? Like, I got this white space. It's just this little thing that I'm doing on the side. I'm going to talk about that language as well. Just this little thing that I'm doing on the side. So I'm not going to apply all of the business stuff, but that doesn't make it sustainable. And so like this mindset shift of, this is the company that I'm running, these are the goals that I'm seeking, this is how I align these things. When you commit to yourself, and like if you have that level of discipline, and then if you commit to yourself, because I do believe in accountability partners, and they can help you some way. But at the end of the day, if I tell you yes and I go home and I'm just like, well, that doesn't really matter, you
Right.
know, it doesn't get done. So those are how, how we keep, that's how we balance between the days I fire myself versus the days that I'm quitting.
So my next question.
Oh boy.
This is a girl question.
Girl question, yes.
How does dating and, all of this fit in the artistpreneur life? And I know you, so.
She knows me.
I know you.
I think, not even I think, let me tell you how real it is. You got to layer on location, right? So we are in D.C., where, according to one of our great 202 Creates residents, it is the worst city for dating for straight people.
I don't know about that.
Wait a minute. From a numbers perspective.
Okay. I mean, I've lived in New York and L.A.
Yeah.
I will say L.A. is far worse. Sorry, all you L.A. Folks watching.
We scratch.
Listening.
I didn't. Yeah, L.A. did not work for me. Not just being there for the weekend. I was like, and on my visits, I have great time. I love some great LA people, but
well, I guess my real question for dating. I mean,
I was like,
dating is hard.
Because I was like, where do you want me to start?
Like, dating is hard everywhere.
Yes,
but
that's true.
I guess in terms of managing, all of the work that you do,
yep.
And as a woman of color, an educated woman, a woman of color, how does that work in terms of, finding a partner that enhances everything that you're doing? Because it's so important that, we don't just have, a 9 to 5 where we just check in and clock out, that we're working around the clock.
Listen,
and
I know when I like somebody when I don't work. That's one. So I think that's a very real thing. So actually, let me take it back.
Or when your partner is working with you.
Oh, that's beauty at its best. It's like, oh, I got you. Like, I'll never forget, I was talking to a certain person, and it was like middle of the week, and I was like struggling through this model. Homie made the longest drive ever to like run this model and like help me through. I was like, this wait a minute. Like,
so that's the end, fellas.
Wait a minute, you out here trying to help me win too?
Look, if you're dating an artistpreneur, get in with the work.
Get in with, like, we need managers, assistants, cheerleaders.
Yeah, because it's hard.
It's so hard. And I think the other thing is being understanding and empathetic, that it's not that we don't want to spend more time, right? This is literally, it's always about survival. We hope to get to a place, again, moving away from that starving artist crap, where it's more structured. But when you're building something, like, everything does count. And you have to be more intentional. So, like, right. You can't halfway holla at an artistpreneur, because guess what? You halfway hollered yourself out the door, because I'm not checking for you. If we can't, like, we're trying to figure out so many other things. If we don't know where you stand and what it is that your intention are, or what you're trying to do, you just another variable. And
absolutely,
you're
I
a
can attest to that.
You're a non-revenue generating.
Exactly, and then that's the next level, when you can start making money together.
Wait, the homies who
Beyonce and Jay-Z have just laid it out.
Listen. Oh, you want to do a collabo? Yes, let's do this collabo. What else can we do? That's great, but
because it's a lifestyle, really.
Exactly.
I mean, we're doing this not necessarily we're looking for fame and riches, but it's in us that we can't stop. So to have, a partner that is just going to totally take away from that, it's not going to work. And
you got to feed into it. And here's the thing. I also think it depends on. There are a couple things, like, if we want to layer into, like, what your love language is. Like, I'm big on service, which makes sense, because it's kind of like, hey,
right.
Help, let's work, let's spend this time together. That checks those boxes. Some people are gift people. And listen, she might say, you know what, baby, go ahead and book all these studios. Like, that, hey, that's a great gift. Go ahead and invest in the things. Everybody's different, and I'm
a physical person.
Listen,
I need snuggles and hugs and
hashtag
constant reassurance.
Look, words of affirmation.
Back rubs.
Listen, foot rubs. I'm all
for that.
We're down for the things. Clearly, we want it all, and nothing wrong with that. But again, like, you don't get there without wishy-washy. So what I found on my artistpreneur journey, like, the most successful things have been with people who, one, are empathetic and understanding to what's going on, great communicators, because the whole, like, I guess the too cool for school thing,
right?
Like, I don't have time.
It's like we've seen it all. I'm telling you, and I feel like I've seen it all.
The jokes I could have, and then we're also like not 15, right? So at this point in time, you're making decisions, and then we have, I would say, the upside of a different type of flexibility. So right. Like in an ideal case, when you're communicating, this is what it is. Look. Oh, we can act the fool at the randomest times because I just shift the schedule. But you got to earn that.
And the thing is, you're looking for a friend first, so.
Hello.
And hopefully it turns into good business.
Good. High five.
High five.
Put it out there in the universe.
So, okay. So, Shermica, I'm going to play a little game with you just so we can get to know who the artist, the entrepreneur is. So it's either or.
Okay.
All right. So the first one is spaghetti or ravioli?
Spaghetti.
Me too. Dogs or cats?
Dogs. Somebody else got to take care of it, though.
We're sisters, okay? Jamaica or Trinidad?
Trinity.
Of course. We knew that. Jay-Z or Kanye?
Jay-Z. Brooklyn.
All the time. 70s or 80s?
80s, baby.
I would be the 70s. I just want the fro and the look. I just want
the music,
all of that.
Like the soul in the music was also.
Yeah,
I'm 80s baby, so
but
I just want
80s. So
here we are.
I know all these. New York or L.A.
New York,
of course. Nicki or Cardi?
Cardi, and I know Nicki's Trini, so you know. Cardi.
All right.
Yeah, here we are.
I'm torn in between, so we'll talk about that at another time. Uber or public transportation?
Uber in DC, public transportation in New York. I said it. Sorry. Here we are.
Likewise. Malcolm or Martin?
Malcolm.
Theater or film?
Theater.
Last one. Machel or Kes?
Well, Machel, because we've been on stage, so here we are.
Right. This is all of this. Everything is the same. This is why we are sister. Of course. So I want to thank you, Shermica, for coming out and sharing your story. Be sure to follow her, support all of the work that she's doing, and just shout out your social media one more time.
Sure. SocaTribe.com. So SOKATRIBE.com, and you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, the Book of Faces. Look us up on the internet. Go ahead and come out, Kitty and me. We're going to be hitting New York. Check out, definitely follow us so you can see when our documentary drops.
Absolutely. She's a filmmaker. She's repping for the culture.
Hardcore.
Catch her on the road. Soca Tribe.
Take a
Sokanista. Catch her in class. She's all over the city. New York, everywhere.
Yep.
So thank you, Shermica.
Thanks for having me.